The storm over the caricature of Muhammad continues to sweep across Europe and Asia.
Their intent has been to provoke the Muslims and to incite hate, to incite hate, to incite hate, to incite hate.
We believe this is about a fight against an Islamic-dominated Muslim world and against our national liberty and freedom.
The Jyllands Posten newspaper. After the cartoons were initially published, a group of 11 ambassadors to Denmark from mostly Muslim countries asked for a meeting with the Prime Minister, who declined.
The suggestion that Europe should accommodate the Muslim demands is likely to infuriate the majority of Danes.
In London, 15,000 people marched peacefully.
There have been numerous protests across the Muslim world.
The Jyllands Posten newspaper.
The Islamic right has come out. Some 50,000 people came out in Istanbul, which is a huge number, in a totally secular state.
On the Danish embassy.
The Jyllands Posten newspaper.
Across the world, Muslims continue to rally and protest, and
Despite
some
appeals for calm from a number of religious and political leaders, the momentum of the protest is far from exhausted.
The Jyllands Posten newspaper.
Afghan to Lebanon attacked embassies and European Union offices, and several people have now died in the march.
But some of the Danish government are convinced that freedom of speech takes precedence over what they see as pandering to an Islamic community.
In Damascus, Syria today, protesters set fire to the Danish embassy.
Any offense caused by the depiction.
The storm over the
Muslims here have
caricature
picked
of
up on
Muhammad
recent reports that the paper
across
turned
Europe
down
and Asia.
cartoons depicting negative images of Jesus Christ a few years ago for fear they would offend
The
readers.
publication of caricatures of the Prophet Muhammad in a Danish newspaper has caused unprecedented economic problems for Denmark.
The organisers hoped the conference would yield common ground.
What do you think is the common ground that you've sort of reached?
Finding a place where we can meet, a common ground.
To reach common ground.
It's not common ground. Try to find common ground. I think we do have some common ground.
That was important to lay down the common ground.
You're willing to do whatever it takes to find a common ground, common ground, common ground.
احنا جينا للدنمارك ليه؟ احنا هنا ليه؟ مش عشان ديبيت، احنا هنا علشان نمد ايدينا لشعب الدنمارك بمبادرة نقول فيها دائما دعاة المسلمين بيجوا اوروبا يقابلوا الجالية الاسلامية. احنا لأول مرة في التاريخ يأتي دعاة المسلمين مش للجالية الاسلامية، لنسمع الغرب ونعرفهم بديننا ونبينه ونقول لهم هذه أيدينا، تعالوا نمد الجسور. أول مرة نكون مبادرين مش ردود أفعال، فإحنا هنا علشان كده.
After the cartoons were initially published, a group of 11 ambassadors to Denmark from mostly Muslim countries asked for a meeting with the Prime Minister, who declined.
First of all, I would like to emphasize that a Danish government can never apologize on behalf of a free and independent newspaper. That's simply, completely impossible.
I'm not a refugee. I didn't came to Denmark. I'm born here. I'm a Danish Muslim. So I'm talking about my rights. I didn't come here to feel welcome. I should be welcomed by when I came to this country by birth.
Can I just say one thing to Mr. Hussain? What rights is it that you don't have? Honestly, you got every right in the world living here as a Danish citizen. You can vote, you can go into political parties, you can get a job, you can do whatever you like. You just have to get on with it. And I'm sorry to say to some of these, also the newcomers here, get on with it. When do we feel welcome? Make yourself welcome. It's pathetic to listen to. And I don't want to listen to this pathetic.
Mr. President, here I must ask you one thing. One from your party actually likened Muslims to cancer cells. One in your group in the parliament likened the Islamic scarf to a symbol of rockers, like we call them here. Is that to welcome people?
We are not part of any welcome committee. We would like to see, as I say, the newcomers to get on with it. And I think that everybody would agree here in this panel that when you come to a new country, you get on with the stuff and you get acquainted to the country, you work and you do your duty, and then you might be welcome. Sorry.
But Mr. Hussain was born here.
You're absolutely welcome. You were born here, you're very welcome. Also those ones that came later are very welcome if they make themselves welcomed.
أما النقطة التي ذكرها الأستاذ عندما قال للمسلمين ينبغي أن يعملوا حتى يحترموا، أشعرتني بالاحتقار، وهذا أمر مهين أن ينظر إلى المسلم أنه جاء عالة. أريد أن أصحح معلومة ذكرها الأستاذ. أول من وفد من المسلمين إلى هنا لم يفدوا لاجئين، هم وفدوا عمالا احتاجت إليهم الدنمارك. أنا أتكلم عن الإسلام الذي أصبح دين جزءا من الدنماركيين. هؤلاء دنمارك أسلموا. أنا أقول هؤلاء يشعرون بالاحتقار من الكلام الذي يتكلم به عن الإسلام على أنه دين اللاجئين الشحاتين، ولا يحترم أنه جزء من الدنمارك. أنا أطلب منه للوصول إلى تفاهم أن ينزل عن هذا الاستكبار، عن احتقار المسلمين، وهذا سيفتح أبوابا من التفاهم فيما بيننا وبينه.
Some of the comments made afterwards that have been reported that the Muslim world had to be provoked in order to learn from his oppression and this type of things. That doesn't seem to be in the spirit of a substantiated dialogue between two cultures that's going to be productive.
If we really want peaceful coexistence, I think rationalism needs to be reviewed in as much as how can we remain rationalistic from your perspective and hold on to your absolute, what you hold on to be as absolute, what is your sacred, almost, but while recognizing that it goes up against, in the face of the sacred and the absolute of the other people. In other words, if you were to absolutely live your way you will be in full clash with those other people. So the question is, can you maintain the universal value of courtesy towards someone else because they believe in truth and beauty, in spite of your not believing in truth and beauty, because you are offended when whatever you think is true is insulted?
Yeah, thank you very much. It was, I would just round up. I would say it's been very inspiring, also listening to you talking to you, distinguished gentlemen. Nice to have met you. It was a very good speech you gave here in the end. I agree with you that the freedom of speech to us is not sacred. That's a wrong word to use. I totally agree. To be sacred things has to do with faith and religion, and I do not believe in that way in freedom of speech. Is not sacred to me. Okay. I believe I work with things of this world, and when Muslims, as general spoken Muslims, wants to introduce and live their society in a certain way, then to me that is politics, and I can indeed criticize it if I like to. I can wait, myself can wait with paradise till after I've died, and I wish Muslims could do the same.
It was a pleasure to meet you, and it was a big honor for me. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was nice meeting you.
The publication of caricatures of the Prophet Muhammad in a Danish newspaper has caused unprecedented economic problems for Denmark.
Arla officials say the boycott is costing the company roughly $200 million a day.
In 5 days, a tsunami of consumer reaction has totally brought our business to a standstill.
We do not have any estimates so far, but we are very concerned about the situation.
A yearly revenue in the neighborhood of $500 million that comes to about a little less than $2 million revenue is lost every day.
شعرت بالإهانة لأنه إحنا كمسلمين ما ضرنا الدنمارك بشيء. لا ديننا ضر الدنمارك، ولا رسولنا الكريم ضر الدنمارك، ولا إحنا الشعب المسلم ولا إسلامنا ضر الدنمارك. خليهم لما يخسروا باليوم مليارات ساعتها حيعرفوا هم إيش اللي عملوا. خليهم، إحنا كمسلمين حنرد عليهم بطريقة سلمية، لا عنف، لا مسبات، لا إشي، بس حنقاطع منتوجاتكم بدناش إياها.
Well, as a single company, we can't really solve this. That's really why we depend on a solution from the political side and this Danish newspaper.
Some in the Danish government are convinced that freedom of speech takes precedence over what they see as pandering to an Islamic community that refuses to assimilate into Danish culture.
We have worked so hard to establish a market in the Middle East, and overnight, no market. It's a shame.
Does he support the boycott?
هل أنت تؤيد المقاطعة؟
أنا أؤيد إنهاء الأسباب التي سببت المقاطعة حتى لا تأتي مرة أخرى.
What he supports is
أنا أؤيد إنهاء الأسباب التي سببت المقاطعة.
He supports to get rid of the causes that led to the boycott.
حتى لا تحصل مرة أخرى.
So it doesn't happen another time.
يا مرحبا لياكم، الله يبارك فيكم. يا مرحبا. الله يبارك فيكم.
What happened from the cartoon is a very few numbers of people did this fire. In your country and in our country, we are fair. But these few people, the rational people, didn't do anything, still silent. So without do something to make our voice louder than the other extremism, we will not get any solutions. So let's start to work together in projects, practical projects.
But what does it take to make this conflict go away?
The hope in the youth. Again, I put my hope in the meeting yesterday and today between the Danish youth and the Muslim youth.
So how do you feel now that the 2 days has concluded and you've been at the heart of it because both of you were participants in the actual dialogue? What do you think is the common ground that you've sort of reached after these 72 hours?
It's not common ground, but it's just like we're different, but it's all right that we're different, and I can have a different friend. I think we do have some common ground, but also diversity, which is also very important that we have that both within our countries and between the countries.
After the fury over the Mohammed cartoons, the organisers hoped the conference would yield common ground between Denmark and the Islamic world, but the gulf appeared as wide as ever.
وكنت عطوفا وحنينا على الجميع. إننا نحبك كثيرا يا رسول الله. وكنت تقول بأن الله عز وجل هو أيضا يحبكم. لنرسل رسالة ونناشد العالم كله بكلمة واحدة: فداء أرواحنا فداءك يا رسول الله. أرواحنا فداءك يا رسول الله.
We're hoping that enough bridges are built and enough human conviviality takes place that allows for everybody clearly seeing, undistortedly, the perspective of the other.
Everybody here knows that it's necessary for the Middle East and Denmark to sit down and talk. People will probably prefer it on different occasions and in different ways, but I think it's widely accepted that we need to have a conversation and to learn more about each other.
A
positive thing after what has happened is Muslims and Danes in dialogue. That in itself is very positive, right?
On behalf of the طابة Foundation, I would like to extend our sincere gratitude and thanks to everyone for coming. The clash of civilizations, violence, terrorism, freedom of speech, secularism, the entire world was engulfed in a debate which unfortunately also went beyond a debate and had serious economic impact across the globe. And also there was unfortunate violent acts, and there was a lot of political tension, much of which still remains with us today.
When we first went to Abu Dhabi, that was the first real encounter between the Muslim delegates and the Danish delegates, because the initial meeting in Copenhagen was an initial meeting and it was very brief, but Abu Dhabi was structured. There were scholars from both sides, professors, etc. And that was important to lay down the common ground.
معرفة الحقيقة هي التي تشعره بأخوته الإنسانية لأفراد الأسرة الإنسانية جمعاء. ونحن التقينا في هذا المكان، أنتم من أقاصي أوروبا وأنا من دمشق وآخرون من جهات أخرى، لا لمغنم ولا لتجارة، وإنما بحثا عن الحقيقة بواسطة الحوار وبواسطة المعرفة.
أولا أود أن أؤكد على حاجتنا الماسة إلى الحوار. الحوار مبدأ، الحوار منهج، لأن جميعا بحاجة إلى أن نتحاور. نحن اليوم في قرية كونية واحدة.
The whole world is undergoing a globalization that brings us all much closer together, and even in each society we are bringing different cultures, different religions very closely together, and this is a process, a learning process for all of us.
المشكلة تتعلق باستيعاب المجتمع الغربي لنبتة الإسلام النابتة في داخل هذا المجتمع. فالمشكلة مشكلة تتعلق بشيء موجود في الغرب، وليست بمشكلة تتعلق بشيء يتعارض ما بين الشرق والغرب في الصلة وفي العلاقة.
There is a big problem there between the East and the West, somehow, these cultural differences and religious differences. And Danes are, whether they like it or not, obligated to step into this globalized community. Like they say that global economy has happened for Denmark, but maybe the train of global culturalism hasn't necessarily happened in Denmark. You won't find many Danes that agree with that.
They have to learn how to deal with the existence of cultural minorities. I think that's one thing I've kind of getting the feeling of after all these discussions and workshops and lectures.
An important statement from my point of view is that freedom is about choosing between different options. And if freedom is supposed to have any value, you must be allowed to make the wrong choices, obviously, in my perspective at least. I mean, who gets to set the only right options? In my perspective, you don't have freedom if you only can choose the right thing. You must be able to choose the wrong thing.
If we deal with every issue in the world like me and hell with the rest of the world, we're not gonna live in a civilized society. That's a jungle. It's like, so the strongest voice is gonna be heard, the most powerful. And that simply means we're not humans anymore. It's like humanitarian cause is that the one that you feel the pain of others maybe before yours. And that's basically what Islam stands for.
It's becoming more and more clear for me that we are totally very different, because we're really speaking in two different directions. When you're saying that to me, I can really feel that, yeah, we are very individualistic in the West, and we do not at all think like you do. And I wish we did somehow, and opposite, I mean, we're so different.
And the Friday prayer itself consists of two main acts. One is the masjid is adorned with various verses from the Quran in Arabic calligraphy all around the masjid. You can see on the walls. This is a very typical style of Muslim architecture and mosque architecture. Traditionally, images are prohibited for religious purposes, so you will not find images of various saints or prophets of other things in an Islamic place of worship. Rather, what you will have is geometric design. This is often a place where people will come and spend a few minutes of a break. They might grab the Quran, read it, offer a few voluntary prayers. So this is generally the masjid.
What's the issue or the theme of today's prayer?
موضوعها الإسلام الذي يرضي الله يتمثل في أمرين: العقل الذي يدرك والقلب الذي يحب. ينبغي أن يتحقق الإنسان بمعرفة الحقيقة الكونية بعقله وأن يجعل قلبه وعاء لحبه.
You are the one who has been chosen. You have a responsibility. He was actually taken by his wife Khadija, who was really the eminent figure in that period. Many times it's also a work of art.
And visiting the mosque the other day, I almost cried because I really feel that God is present, and I believe that we believe in the same God, and I really feel that in that context I can really connect with you. So by appealing to the heart and the love of mankind, I think we can reach each other and build bridges.
This is not the first time that religion has clashed with artistic expression.
Opinion polls show that most people here back the government's stance over freedom of speech.
I accept that it caused offence, but that's life. In a democracy, that happens.
Remember that there's no such thing as complete freedom. It doesn't operate in a vacuum. It does bring consequences and responsibility.
Freedom of speech meant the freedom to be offensive.
الصحفيين احنا ماشي ضد حرية الصحافة، لكن ليس على حساب عقائد الناس. الدين الإسلامي وحبيبنا مصطفى عليه الصلاة والسلام أكد أكثر من مرة في كتاب الله الكريم وفي سنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وسلم احترام الآخر.
What can be deeply offensive to some communities are just basic freedoms to others.
What we'd say to artists is, please criticize religion if you want to, but do it responsibly.
So those of us who are standing up here and talking, or those of us sitting on the other side, and talking about freedom of expression, don't think you are brave, because a lot of us have to be a lot braver from where we come from. At least you have a choice about which kind of freedom of expressions. Most of the Muslims in the world living in difficult circumstances have stood up for freedom of expression to an extent that they've suffered that you will never understand.
The freedom to adhere to a particular set of religious symbols is not freedom from criticism or lampoon. It's not freedom from losing one's faith, now and then.
حرية التعبير عن الرأي موجودة في المجتمع المسلم، هي أيضا موجودة في الهوية الثقافية المسلمة كما أنها موجودة في الثقافة الأوروبية، إلا أن ضوابط حرية التعبير عن الرأي ودلالات حرية التعبير عن الرأي هي التي حصل فيها الاختلاف.
I have no problem with freedom of expression. What I have a problem is for anybody to use it to say that it is freedom of expression to take on upon themselves the freedom to abuse others.
I also think there's a darker side to it. Often you'll find that these sort of cartoons, these sort of satires have been used to dehumanize certain groups of people who have been excluded from power.
If Danish Muslims are expected to accept the ridicule of holy symbols, and the answer is yes, they are, on the same terms as everybody else in Denmark.
So basically you don't believe in that, just we need a break, we need to just back off a little bit and try to understand the truth of Islam.
Let it be very clear to everybody in this room that Islam and Muslims are a reality for the 21st century all across the globe.
Words were said, pictures were drawn, people were hurt, millions and millions of people were hurt. And I don't blame anybody for that. Okay, people have been hurt. Habib Ali has been hurt. Sheikh Dr. Ramadan al-Bouthi has been hurt. People who, if the cartoonist himself came here, Habib Ali, Sheikh al-Bouthi would take food out of their own children's mouth to feed that person. So you know now the kind of people, hang on. You know now the kind of people that were hurt. And I want to ask you, my new friends, Yebe, Mads Erik, Mads, Karsten, Zhenya, Caroline. In 10 years, maybe you'll be in an office because you'll be an editor or you'll be a politician with a lot of power. And I want to ask you now, if someone came to you and said, can I publish cartoons again insulting the Prophet? What would you say?
You know, we had this amazing trip out to the desert. I was actually very skeptical of it. I thought this was going to be a stupid sort of desert trip, you know, let's go and like sit on a camel or something like that. But we went way out into the desert and it was gorgeous. I got covered in sand.
The thing with going to the desert, I mean, anyone who experiences the desert as the desert, I mean, it definitely gives you a new perspective on things. You realize that nothing is concrete or universal.
There was terrific dancing, which didn't seem contrived at all. It was wonderful. And then you know, songs about the Prophet and this tent and a great dinner. I think people really had a lot of fun. I mean, really had fun.
You know, if you just, everywhere you turn, you know, you see the horizon around you. It's not cut off by any buildings or anything else. I think that's a very humbling experience. طابة Foundation gave each of the delegates traditional Arab clothing. So all the men were given thobes and the أعقاب, the qatra that they wore on their head. The women were all given, you know, female thobes as well, and hijabs, and they showed them how to wear it, how to tie it. And I thought that, and you saw all the whole Danish delegation wearing them quite happily. And they were all, I jokingly said, "How do you like that?" They go, "You know what? It makes sense to wear this."
Watching Sheikh Habib Al-Jafri speaking and watching him act, it came to me that if this man is acting according to how the Prophet Muhammad wanted Muslim people to act, I'm starting really to get really close to understanding where you're coming from. Because if Habib Al-Jafri is acting as the Prophet Muhammad, what could you do else but love this guy and love the Prophet Muhammad?
Go tell him this is a revolution in mind. This experience is, and in our hearts, this is so special.
Thank you very much. He says this is because of the sincerity that you have.
This is the first time I ever experienced Islam in this way. So welcoming, and this is, I believe, this must be the true face of Islam. This is what I can relate to. The way you communicate life through using love as a way of reaching each other. And actually, I tell you, these last couple of days, I have thought that there is not that big a difference between the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Jesus.
The Danes are, in fact, good-hearted, good people. They're very peace-loving people. For the most part, we certainly have exceptions. We have extremists in Denmark who aren't great people, just like there are extremists everywhere else.
So this will not be like a formal conference, I'm sure you know, but more like a study trip into the Danish society and into our member organizations. And hopefully that will give you a good impression of how we organize our work and how we try to involve youth in Denmark into different types of activities.
I've never been to Europe, and I've never really met a Danish person, so I didn't know what to expect, and I was actually expecting them to be more religious. Their understanding of Islam is skewed because they have such a negative view of religion, their own religion, which they openly claim. They have such a negative view of their own religion, they just assume by proxy that Islam is a negative religion. Not because of what Muslims do, what negative Muslims do, but just because Islam is a religion. Can you be a non-Christian and get a theology degree?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can be a non-Christian. You can be a non-Christian and be a pastor. I mean, nobody checks you. It's up to you.
So if I came to Denmark and I did 6 years of theology and I got seminary training, I could be a pastor?
Yeah. Most of the Christians here in Denmark think that Islam and Christianity are like brothers or sisters. They're really close and we have a lot of things in common. And that we probably have more in common than people that are not religious.
What percentage of the Danish population would you say is church-going or go to Sunday?
2%.
And then the other 90 to 99%, what would be their, if they're asked, why don't you go to church, or why aren't you more involved, what would their answer?
Because they would say one thing, I have my own beliefs. And I can have them in my own sitting room as well as in the church. I don't need a minister or a church to take care of my beliefs. And that's true, And it has something to do with my right to be as individual as I will. To have my personal freedom. And nobody is going to change that. Nobody is going to touch that at all.
I think in any civil society, in any tradition, you have those who speak loudly, but might speak wrongly. And unfortunately, it's usually those who speak loudly are the ones being heard, and those who
may speak correctly but softly are not being heard. I don't think any society will value people who lie, or people who manipulate, or people who use others for their own personal benefits, or people who harm others in order to achieve some type of personal objective. These are things we all agree upon. So at طابة Foundation, basically what we're trying to do is, at an international level, international stage, is put forth this message, that the message of Islam and of the Muslim world is one that's worthy of being heard.
I hope that you have experienced just half of the warmness that we experienced when we were in Abu Dhabi. These kind of trips are very important. When we were in Abu Dhabi, we had 25 members of our youth, of our organizations. We've all come back and have spread the good spirit and the good words and the good thoughts that we had together in Abu Dhabi.
Our experience here started in March when we first came with Habib Ali Jeffrey, who was invited to participate in a dialogue. Then we had the April program in Abu Dhabi, and now we have this study trip here in the summer. And so, to me, dialogue is happening, but also on a personal level, it's beyond dialogue. I consider many of you friends that I feel totally comfortable with calling upon for consultation. So I think this is really what's, at the end of the day, this is what's important, that the barriers get removed, and then we naturally let our human interaction take place. One of our young friends in Syria was there the day of the demonstrations. And as you understand, obviously there were some violent acts committed that day with the burning of the Danish embassy, but there were also some very peaceful protesters who were there. They were protesters, but they were acting in a very peaceful manner. So he was with this group, and the shield had fallen from the embassy. And so it managed, went around and he managed to pick it up and he took it and went home. And this young man at the time felt like, wow, I did something great. I got a piece of their embassy. So then he proceeded to call a very renowned, eminent scholar in the Middle East, Muslim scholar, Habib Ali Jeffrey, who is the general director of the طابة Foundation, whom we work for. So when he called Habib Ali Jeffrey and told him this, Habib Ali told him that that's incorrect for you to think of it this way, because the Islamic law or the Sharia does not permit you to do any type of desecration or harm to even other cultural symbols, even if they're not Muslim cultural symbols. And so he told him to hold on to it, and then at the proper time and place we can bring it and give it back to the people who are most deserving of it.
Yes.
We wanted to bring this here and give it back to Danish Youth Council to show that sort of allay people's fears that the Sharia or the Islamic law, the Islamic religion is a religion that condones this type of behavior. And so even though this young man might have acquired it in a way that we don't approve of, but we felt that it was important since our scholar Habib Ali corrected him on this, and then we was able to sort of set him straight, and then in that way bring it back here to Denmark to its rightful owners.
I think the whole crisis have already laid down, and the mind of the Danish people have already changed from being scared to be actually very, I think, positive about all the different initiatives. I mean, we're doing a lot together with طابة, and a lot of Danish organizations are working very hard to create relationships. So, I mean, things are starting to get actually more positive after the crisis.
I think we've moved on from a sort of very formal relationship, and now I think we all feel comfortable that I can call upon Jeppe, he can call upon me, Solveig, so forth, and speak freely, and we can disagree, we can agree, and there's no fear of any type of counter effects because of that. So that's a great relationship to have, especially when we are representing in sort of official capacity to organizations that are trying to ameliorate the situation, not just in Denmark and Middle East, but Europe and the greater Western and Eastern world.